Okay, so today's deep dive, it's a doozy.
Mm.
We're talking family ties, political firestorms. Seriously, Shakespearean drama,
Oh, wow.
right? Imagine this. Your dad, the guy who used to be everyone's hero, goes all in with a politician who's, let's just say, polarizing. And then picture yourself endorsing that politician's opponent right in the middle of a presidential election.
Yeah.
Talk about some awkward family reunions, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's the situation Caroline Giuliani, yep, Rudy Giuliani's daughter, finds herself in. Her recent Vanity Fair article is our springboard today. And trust me, it's a wild ride.
I bet.
But we're not here for the gossip. We're using this as a launch pad to explore some seriously big questions. How do you reconcile personal relationships with politics, especially when the stakes are sky high? And what happens when loyalty butts heads with your deepest convictions?
It's a fascinating and, frankly, quite sad situation. Caroline's story really throws these dilemmas into sharp relief, wouldn't you say?
Totally. So for anyone needing a quick rewind, let's talk about Rudy Giuliani, post 9/11. He was America's mayor, the embodiment of resilience.
Right.
Fast forward to today, and he's facing criminal charges alongside Donald Trump for trying to overturn the 2020 election results. Talk about a fall from grace.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast, no doubt. But what's important here is not just the what, but the how. To understand Caroline's story, we need to look at the trajectory of Rudy's choices. His increasing alignment with Trump, his willingness to embrace increasingly fringe views, it's all crucial context for Caroline's decision.
Right, because this isn't just some abstract political debate for her. She's living with the fallout of her father's choices every single day. And her article doesn't shy away from that. She talks about grieving the loss of her father to Trump's influence, which is just heavy. There's this one line that really hit me. Nothing, she writes, I have experienced prepared me for the very public and relentless implosion of my father's life.
It's raw, honest, incredibly powerful. This isn't just about policy disagreements. It's about the personal toll of political radicalization. That word implosion is so striking, isn't it? It speaks to a kind of shattering, both for Rudy himself and those closest to him.
And she's not the bystander, right? She's experiencing this downward spiral, this sense that aligning with Trump can lead to personal and professional ruin firsthand. But here's the real mic drop moment. Caroline Giuliani, daughter of Rudy, comes out and publicly endorses Kamala Harris for president.
Wow.
I mean,
you don't see that every day for a political figure's child to endorse against their own parent,
That's right.
especially in a race as significant as this. It's a powerful statement, wouldn't you say? It speaks to a deep conviction, a willingness to prioritize her own values, even when it comes at a significant personal cost.
It really is. Absolutely. It's like she's drawing a line in the sand, saying, this is where I stand, regardless of family ties. But here's where it gets even more complex and, honestly, more human. Caroline doesn't shy away from saying she still loves her father. She describes their relationship as cartoonishly complicated. But he's still her dad.
Right. That's a really important point. It would be easy to simplify this narrative, to paint it as a clean break. But life is rarely that simple. Caroline's experience reminds us that political disagreements, even when deeply personal and painful, don't necessarily negate love or family bonds. It's messy, it's complicated, and it's something a lot of people are grappling with right now.
Right. It makes you wonder about that tightrope walk between loyalty and personal conviction.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that, especially when the stakes feel so high? It's something I think a lot of people listening can relate to, maybe not on the same scale. But that tension between staying true to yourself and preserving relationships.
Absolutely. And the current political climate, particularly in the U.S., seems to be making that balancing act even harder. Political polarization has seeped into our personal lives, our Thanksgiving dinners, our social media feeds. We see families divided, friendships strained, all because of differing political views.
Yeah. It's like Caroline's family dynamic is a microcosm of what's happening across the country, a sort of pressure cooker of those tensions.
Exactly. And while we can't ignore the role of broader social forces, I think it's important to acknowledge the impact of political figures like Trump. His rhetoric, his approach to politics, it's inherently divisive. It's about drawing lines, about us versus them, whether intentional or not. That kind of approach fuels polarization and makes it harder to find common ground.
So we've got Caroline representing one side of this coin, choosing conviction over blind loyalty, even when it's incredibly tough. But what about the other side of the coin? What drives those who remain fiercely loyal to figures like Trump, even in the face of controversy and actions that many find abhorrent?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I don't think there's a single easy answer. It's likely a complex cocktail of factors.
Okay, so let's unpack that cocktail a bit. What are some of those ingredients? What might be going on beneath the surface?
Yeah, because I'm guessing it's rarely as simple as just agreeing on policy, right?
Exactly. For some, it might be a deep distrust of the government or the establishment. A feeling that Trump, despite his flaws, represents a break from business as usual.
Mm.
They might genuinely believe he's fighting for their interests, even if his methods are unorthodox or controversial.
So sort of shake things up mentality, even if it gets messy.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
And for others, it might run even deeper than policy. There's a strong emotional element to Trump's appeal, a sense of belonging, of being part of a movement that makes them feel seen and heard.
Okay, so we're talking about identity, about tribe, that feeling of we're in this together no matter what. Exactly, and when group identity becomes that central, it can be hard to separate what you believe from what the group believes. It can even feel like criticizing the leader, in this case, Trump, is a betrayal of the entire group.
Wow. So it's almost like blind loyalty becomes a way of protecting that sense of belonging. You're willing to overlook a lot because the alternative,
Yeah.
disagreeing with the group, feels even scarier.
It's a powerful dynamic, and I think it helps explain why some people remain fiercely loyal to figures like Trump. Even when presented with information or evidence that contradicts their beliefs, their loyalty isn't necessarily about logic. It's about something much more visceral, much more emotional.
Which brings us back to Caroline.
Right.
She's essentially chosen to step outside of that dynamic. Knowing full well the personal cost, it takes a lot of courage to take a stand like that,
Right.
especially when you know it might create distance between you and your family.
Yeah. It's a powerful reminder that we all have choices to make. And sometimes those choices require us to prioritize our own convictions, even if it means risking those close relationships. It's not easy. But as Caroline's story shows us, it's possible.
It's definitely a lot to unpack, but, that's what these deep dives are all about.
Yeah.
We're not here to give you easy answers because, let's face it, there often aren't any. But hopefully, we've given you some food for thought.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, understanding the why behind these complex situations is crucial, whether you agree with Caroline's choices or not. Her story forces us to ask ourselves some tough questions. What are our own political values? How do those values intersect with our personal relationships? And when those two things collide, what are we willing to stand up for?
Such important questions. And with that, we wrap up another deep dive. As always, keep those questions coming, keep those conversations going, and most importantly, keep learning. Till next time.